Hi everyone. So today we are going to study a bit about physical and environmental security from CISSP. This is more specific to CCTV monitoring or rather CCTV devices that we are going to look into. We'll be referring to Sean Harris. It's a little outdated version of book that I have, but hopefully the concepts haven't changed over time. So let me just open. So if you see, these are the table of contents that go in this chapter. However, we will not be focusing on any of these right now. We will be directly going to CCTV monitoring. Alright, so you can ignore the error that just popped up because it's not relevant to training at all. So we will start with visual recording devices. So what is a CCTV? It's nothing but a closed circuit TV. Now what does a CCTV really do is something that I'm not going to describe here because I'm sure each one of us know what it is. What's important here is the purpose of CCTV, okay? So here it says to detect, assess and or identify intruders correctly. But what really is the purpose of CCTV if I consider as a part of discussion, right? So a CCTV may be used for an organization purpose. It might be used in a small warehouse or a server room. In fact, a CCTV can also be used at home. Now consider an example when it's used at home. Again, why? What is the purpose? It might be used because you really want to block intruders, or you want to deter them from committing any crimes or stealing any physical assets, because they will be like, oh, this area is monitored by CCTV. It's one of the purposes. Another can be probably you have a baby at home and you have a babysitter as well. You want to monitor and check whether the babysitter is actually doing her duties and responsibilities well. So there are different purposes for a CCTV that you really need to consider before purchasing one. The type of environment the CCTV camera will work in, obviously whether it's internal or external, because let's say it's external, you have to consider things like weather conditions. What if it starts raining? Your CCTV camera will stop functioning. But if it's at home, you don't really have to worry about this. The field of view required. Now this point we will consider later. We will discuss this a little in more details. Amount of illumination of the environment. Now the kind of lightings that is possible is already covered in this chapter before, but since we are not discussing that, let's not get into it. What is important is you need to understand how lit and unlit the areas are, and how the areas are affected by sunlight as well. For example, if you want to have the CCTV monitoring for, let's say, the case that we discussed about your babysitter and a baby, when you're going to be at home in the night, you don't really need to keep the CCTV camera on. So even if you have switched off the lights, you don't care whether the CCTV camera is actually active or not. But let's say it's a server room, then 24 by 7, you need to ensure that there is enough lighting for the CCTV camera to capture. Or let's say the CCTV camera is actually capturing your garden area. Then what do you do in that case? In that case, it will be dark, it will be night at some point of time, but you have to ensure that the lighting feature of the CCTV camera actually suits and fits your requirement. Now, the next important part here is integration with other security controls. Again, the purpose of CCTV again comes here, right? Now, what is the purpose? Let's say that you want to not only monitor what's going wrong or the routine activities, but you also want to stop or alert you or trigger you if you think that something should not happen. For example, you might have a CCTV camera with a sensor which says that if there is any moment detected, please send an email to me or an SMS to me. And I'll be like, oh, there is nobody at home. Then why is a trigger or an event or an email sent to me or an SMS sent to me? And I will go to take some action in such an incident. So whether you want to actually integrate your CCTV with any kind of a security control like an alarm system or IDS system, again it relates back to the purpose of the CCTV that you have implemented. So these are the main concepts that you have to understand for CCTV. Now let's go to what is a CCTV actually made up of. So it's made up of cameras, transmitters, receivers, recording system and a monitor. Now why is a CCTV called a closed circuit? The explanation is given right here. That's because whatever data is captured, right, by the camera's transmitter, it is usually done through a coaxial cable. So it does not broadcast the signals over a public network. So this is the main reason that it's called a closed circuit and not an open circuit camera. Now, what is the kind of an attack that a CCTV camera is most subject to? Is somebody, especially an intruder, who is actually committing a crime and not somebody who has accidentally done something, going across and checking your CCTV camera systems, not your CCTV camera, but the recording system, going through the playback and deleting or modifying the footage, or probably after doing that, even deleting the logs for that matter. So, this is the biggest risk that any CCTV camera system faces. So, you need to have very good access control, you need to have a backup of those logs or the footage into some other system which is outside that location, because a person can just go and just drop that CCTV systems monitoring box so that you are not able to retrieve any of that data. So all these points are important when you consider things like purchasing of the CCTV camera. So let's go to the next point. And yes, before I forget, each CCTV system should have a recording system in place, because let's say that you are doing a live monitoring and you detect something, which is not right, and you want to actually file a case against the person or the intruder, you will not have any proof or evidence to subject it in the court of law, right? So for that case, you need to have that. This is a diagram that I was talking about, which I don't really like. So you can pause on that during the video, but I would not like to discuss that. Let's come to the next point. Alright, so CCTVs actually employ something called as charged coupled devices, that is CCDs. It is nothing but, just to let you know that earlier CCTVs used to use cathode ray tubes, that is CRTs, which are similar to our television systems, the monitors that we used to use earlier, but now they are using more mature technology like CCDs. Now the next point is what I spoke about some time back. Let's discuss this later, which was related to actually the lenses of the CCTV, right, earlier. So there's something called as focal length. Then yeah. So before we move across to what is a focal length, let me just give you a small background. Let's have two cameras. This is the sensor. This is the lens. Sorry. Right. This is the object. Now what is the difference is, did you notice the smaller the focal length, that is this, will give a wide angle, whereas larger the focal length will give a smaller angle. Okay, so this is the relation between the focal length and the angle. Now let's come back. So it says the focal length of a lens defines effectiveness in viewing the objects. Okay, it's related to the angle of view. Short focal length provides wider one, whereas a long one provides a narrower view. Okay, so this is just an example which probably you can just pause and read. It's related to a warehouse. Okay. Okay, now this talks about, let's say we use a lens with a smaller focal length value. What does this mean? That there's a wide angle view, right? So the person over here was able to view everything. Now let's say a security guard is sitting here and viewing the monitor, and he is looking after this entire space. Now he suddenly looks and finds some kind of an intruder here. Does he really require this view? He does not. So he needs to adjust this lens, move it ahead, so that this focuses especially on this person and excludes this entire environment or the surrounding. So The zoom lens provides this facility by allowing the viewer to change the field of view to different angles. So, the security guard might use a remote control to do that if he feels that something is not correct. So, when both the wide scenes and the close up captures are needed, a zoom lens is best. Again, we go back the purpose of the CCTV monitoring, right? So, if it's for intruders or an organization, then yes, you may want to zoom in to see what's happening. Now, the next important terminology that we're going to use is shallow depth of focus, or rather, let's say depth of focus, right? To be more familiar with it. And then there's something called as depth of field. So what is depth of field and what is depth of focus? All right, now let's go back. All right, so this is a photographer, this is a photographer, right? This is the field. Now there's a circle, square and triangle. Okay, now what is in focus? Now he has put this in focus. All right, so this is called a plane of focus. This object is a focus. What is depth of field? Here the depth of field, let's say, is this. That means this and this is out of focus. Whereas if I come back here and this is the depth of field, oh, where did my triangle go? Alright, now there is nothing which is out of focus. So how does this relate back? Let's go back. So it says, think about a picture that you want to take of your spouse with the Grand Canyon in the background. Isn't this related to this? That you're focusing on this, or you're focusing on this. Let's say the square is your spouse. Now coming back here, the type of lens allows, oh, I'm so sorry. Yeah. So it provides a softer backdrop which will lead the viewers of the photograph to the foreground, which is your spouse, and greater depth of focus is nothing but you have covered more objects in your focus. Now next that we are discussing, so this was a depth of focus, depth of field. Now let's come to the part where how is it related, right? So depth of field increases as the size of the lens opening decreases. Is that right? So if I have a lens and this decreases, the depth keeps on increasing, which is absolutely right? And as the subject distance increases or the focal length decreases, which is absolutely right. So it's the same concept that we use for wider angle. So you have to understand certain things over here, which is very important. One, smaller focal length, wider angle, lower focal length, smaller angle. Okay, as the subject comes in front, that is the distance decreases between the subject and the lens, the focus increases, that is depth, there's a greater focus. As the object moves further away from the lens, then there is a greater field. Here it's a smaller field, so in this case it's called shallow depth. Now let's come to the last part. Okay, before the last part, there's one concept called as manual iris lenses. Now, what does an iris do to our eyes, right? It adjusts the light that comes in. So, manual iris is generally a little, we can say has fixed lighting, right? So, you can set it and keep. Whereas an auto iris lens will be a little more expensive because it's used in environment where the lighting keeps changing. Yep. So, we were talking about auto iris and we were talking about manual iris over here. Now on a sunny day, the iris lens closes to reduce the amount of light entering right at night, the iris opens. This is just similar to our eyes, right? So you can probably try to see if this works. Alright, now the last point that we actually come back to is the illumination, right? So this is all important from the CISSP exam perspective. Probably during your actual experience you may not really come up with this, but yeah, sometimes you do end up reading some procedures, policies, and you are a little blank, or some, let's say you go for an audit and the auditee uses these terms and you are like just staring at that person and blankly and trying to just pretend that you know what it is. These are the points that will actually help you to address these challenges. So the elimination requirements, right, are usually represented in something called as the lux value. Okay, so this is a metric which is used to basically represent the illumination. Now the intensity of the light, that is nothing but the illumination, is represented either as lux or foot candles. Now the conversion, right, I don't think that's really important, so we can probably just skip it. Now there are two types of mounting basically. One is called as a fixed mounting, right? For example, at your home, again the babysitter example. Second is PTZ capabilities. That is PTZ capabilities. Basically that is pan, tilt or zoom. So depending on the kind of purpose that you have for your CCTV, you can go for such a model as well. Now the next one is basically if you see something called as an annunciator rather system. What is an annunciator system rather? So basically, instead of expecting a security guard to stare at a CCTV monitor, the guard can carry out other activities and be alerted by the annunciator if movement is detected on the screens. This is what I explained some time back on the kind of a trigger that can be sent to you via SMS or email. So that's why it is also something that is annunciator system. So one important thing over here is, right now you might just purchase a CCTV camera basically, and you'll be happy that okay, you spend a lot of money. But what's more important here is actually configuring the CCTV as per your requirements, and this is where first your policy will lay those requirements, what your CCTV should actually be monitoring, what is the purpose and why. Once that is done, then you need somebody to actually configure the CCTV camera to ensure that whatever you want in the first place is actually what the CCTV is really doing. And then yes, obviously your testing and all those things will start and actually going live and implementing. But without all these requirements, your administrative controls, that is your policy, your actual purchase, your technical controls like your logical access to your CCTV system, and obviously your physical controls, that is your CCTV system itself, which is also a hardware, right? So all these things will together make your information security physical controls from CCTV perspective more effective.